The SOS call, 5 to 7 minute hook. The universe had never felt more silent. The once thriving galaxies, filled with the vibrant hum of countless civilizations, now seemed eerily quiet. Something was wrong. An unknown terror, larger than any force they had ever encountered, had spread across the stars. Entire species were vanishing, wiped out without a trace. The known universe was on the brink of collapse. For the first time, alien species that once believed themselves to be the strongest were scared. Their weapons were useless, their tactics failed, and no matter what they tried, they couldn't stop the relentless force that was tearing through their worlds. The galaxy's greatest warriors had no answers, and there was no one left to fight. The fear was overwhelming. But there was one thing they had left: hope. A last, desperate hope. It started with a small planet on the edge of the galaxy, a world that had long been known for its resilience. The planet's inhabitants were strong, extremely strong. They had fought off invaders, battled against enemies from every corner of the universe, and survived every possible threat. But even they were powerless against the new enemy. The situation had become dire, and as their cities burned, they knew they could not survive much longer. In their final act of desperation, they sent out a call, a signal broadcasted to the far reaches of the galaxy. It was not directed at any specific species. There was no time for that. The message was simple, but it carried a weight that could not be ignored. Help us. We are losing. We cannot fight this alone. We need you. The aliens did not know who would receive it, nor did they care. They were on the edge of extinction, and they needed any help they could get. But the message did not go unnoticed. Millions of light years away, in the darkest corners of space, something stirred. A fleet of ships that had been sleeping for ages, began to wake. The fleet was ancient, older than the galaxy itself, and its power was unimaginable. These ships were not built by any ordinary civilization. They were the ships of the Deathworlders, humans. Humans, the species feared across the universe for their strength, resilience, and relentless drive. Known for surviving in environments that would obliterate other species in seconds, they had earned their place in galactic history as the ultimate survivors, the ones who would never give up, no matter the odds. They were the galaxy's most terrifying warriors, their power unmatched. As the distress signal from the alien planet echoed through space, the humans knew what it meant. They had been called, and they would not ignore the plea for help. The Deathworlders had faced battles on their own home planets, where the very environment tried to kill them every single day. No alien enemy could match what they had already survived. The fleet stirred to life, and without a word, they began their journey. Their ships, once silent, now hummed with the energy of countless engines powering up. The massive ships began to move toward the source of the signal. The aliens who had sent the message had no idea what was coming. They had expected help, yes, but not this. They could not have known that the ones answering their call were the very beings they had feared for so long. The Deathworlders, the humans, were coming. Across the galaxy, millions of eyes watched as the fleet moved closer. No one knew exactly what to expect when the Deathworlders arrived. Would they be saviors, or would they become another threat to deal with? There was no way to know, but one thing was certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. The alien species who had sent the SOS would soon learn the true meaning of the word help. The Deathworlders would not show mercy. They would not hesitate, and they would not fail. As the fleet neared its destination, the tension in the galaxy was palpable. The universe held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when humanity, the species that had survived against all odds, finally arrived to face the enemy that had threatened everything. What the aliens didn't know was that the Deathworlders had been through far worse. They had survived the harshest conditions imaginable. They had fought battles where the very land beneath their feet was trying to kill them. And they had won. Now, the Deathworlders were coming to show the galaxy what true power looked like. and nothing would ever be the same again. The arrival of the Deathworlders. The galaxy had never seen anything like it before. The aliens who had sent the SOS, their planet on the verge of collapse, had no idea what was coming for them. They had hoped for help, but they could never have imagined the scale of the force that was about to descend upon them. As the Deathworlder fleet drew closer, there was no turning back. In the vast emptiness of space, the alien leaders watched in awe and fear as the first of the Deathworlder ships emerged from the depths of the dark void. These were not the ships of regular military fleets. These were ships designed for survival in the most hostile environments. They had been built to withstand the most extreme conditions that the universe could throw at them, conditions that no other species could endure. The ships were enormous, hulking masses of metal and technology, bristling with weapons that could wipe out entire planets. But what was truly terrifying wasn't their size or their firepower. It was the humans themselves. Their reputation preceded them. The Deathworlders were known across the galaxy not just as skilled warriors, but as creatures who could survive anything. They could thrive in places where no other species could even survive for a few minutes. As the fleet neared the planet in distress, every single ship was manned by humans, and the alien species who had sent out the SOS could only imagine what this would mean. The Deathworlders had a history of showing no mercy to their enemies. Their reputation for being ruthless was well earned. And yet these very beings were now coming to help. It was both a relief and a terrifying thought. On the ground, the aliens who had first sent the signal watched as the skies darkened, and the Deathworlder ships filled the atmosphere. Their hearts raced, not only because of the help that was arriving, but also because of the fear that now swept over them. What did it mean to have the Deathworlders arrive? What did they want in exchange for their help? No one knew, but there was no turning back. The damage had already been done. The ships were coming. The first signs of contact were ominous. No one had expected the Deathworlders to land immediately. Instead, they surrounded the planet in a display of power, as if to remind the struggling aliens just who was in charge now. The air crackled with tension. The massive ships hovered above, blocking out the sun, casting shadows over entire cities. There was no sound, just the eerie hum of alien technology as it surveyed the planet below. The aliens had never felt so small. They had fought wars across the stars, conquered planets, and believed themselves to be the most powerful beings in the galaxy. But now, with the Deathworlders' arrival, they were faced with the stark reality that they had underestimated the human species in every possible way. On the ground, the leaders of the alien world held an emergency council. They had no choice but to work with the Deathworlders. They had no other hope of survival, but there was something unsettling about it. The human ships above them weren't just a rescue force. They were a reminder that the galaxy's most dangerous and relentless warriors were now in control. The first human delegation that descended from the ships were not what the aliens had expected. There was no grand military display, no intimidating gestures. They simply came. Dressed in simple, practical gear, they stood with an air of quiet confidence that spoke volumes. They did not speak much, but when they did, their words were sharp and direct. They were here to solve the problem. No negotiations, no delays. One of the alien leaders, a seasoned commander, approached the humans cautiously. His body trembled slightly. He had fought countless battles, but standing in front of these humans, he felt small. He wasn't sure whether to be relieved or terrified. The humans were here to help, but the reality was, no one had ever been able to predict what they might do. "Are you prepared to help us?" the alien leader asked, his voice steady but full of uncertainty. The human commander looked him in the eye, his gaze unwavering. "We didn't come here to negotiate. We came here to end this." And just like that, the air shifted. The tension was palpable. The Deathworlders were here, and they were not going to back down. The next few moments would determine the fate of the entire planet, but no one knew exactly how far the Deathworlders would go to ensure victory. The clock was ticking. The alien species had no choice now but to follow the lead of the Deathworlders and trust in the humanity that had earned a reputation as the galaxy's most terrifying warriors. The true test of humanity's might was just beginning. The might of the Deathworlder forces. The alien leaders had hoped for a swift resolution. They had never imagined that the arrival of the Deathworlder fleet would be so overwhelming. Their once proud planet, which had stood strong against countless threats, now felt vulnerable under the shadow of the humans' vast warships. The tension was almost suffocating as the leaders gathered in their emergency council, waiting for the next move. What they didn't know was that they had just witnessed the first step in an inevitable storm. The humans, though quiet and composed, exuded an unmistakable aura of authority. When they spoke, their words were concise, stripped of any superfluous emotion. The alien leaders had underestimated them before, but now, faced with the calm intensity of the Deathworlder presence, they realized just how outmatched they were. These humans didn't just wield weapons, they radiated an air of untouchable power, a power that had been earned through their brutal, unforgiving survival on their own deathworlds. As the human forces descended to the surface, the aliens could feel the change in the atmosphere. The ships above were more than just symbols of strength. They were a constant reminder that the humans had control. Despite the dire situation, the aliens couldn't help but watch in awe as the humans moved with methodical precision. Every step they took seemed deliberate, calculated. They weren't here to ask questions. They were here to end the crisis. The ground trembled slightly as the human soldiers began to deploy. Their gear was unlike anything the alien species had ever seen. It wasn't just armor. It was a perfect fusion of technology and utility. The humans were prepared for any environment, from the vacuum of space to the harshest planetary surfaces. The weapons they carried weren't just for combat. They were tools of survival. Every human on the ground exuded a sense of readiness, as if they had faced impossible odds countless times and emerged victorious every time. The aliens watched, knowing full well that they had entered a new era, one where they were no longer the top predators. A hush fell over the alien command center as the human commander began to speak. His voice, though quiet, carried an authority that left no room for doubt. "The situation here is worse than you've let on, but we can fix it," the human said, his eyes scanning the alien leaders. "We have the technology and the will to do what's necessary. But make no mistake, we are not here to coddle you. We are here to save your world, and we do it on our terms." The words hung in the air like a thunderstorm, leaving the aliens to wrestle with the reality of what was unfolding. This was no ordinary military intervention. These were Deathworlders, the ones who thrived in the harshest environments, the ones who could endure the unimaginable. Their help came at a price, and the aliens knew they had no choice but to accept it. The human forces moved swiftly, securing key locations across the planet's surface. Every movement was efficient, precise, as if they had already planned every detail of the mission long before setting foot on the planet. No alien force had ever moved with this kind of unyielding discipline. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. These were not just warriors. They were survivors who knew exactly how to survive, how to fight, and how to win. The alien species who had called for help now understood why the humans were feared across the galaxy. As the humans advanced, the alien population looked on in a mixture of awe and fear. The Deathworlders didn't need to show their full strength. Their very presence was enough to remind everyone of the brutality that had forged their reputation. One of the alien leaders, a seasoned war strategist, approached the human commander with a question that had been burning in his mind since the moment the humans had arrived. "What is it that makes you so different from us? We've fought in wars. We've survived against forces that we've destroyed lesser species. Why do you insist on taking such drastic measures?" The human commander's eyes narrowed as he studied the alien leader. For a moment, there was silence. Then, in a voice that was almost too calm, he responded, "Because when we face our enemies, we don't just survive. We thrive. We don't know how to fail. That's why we're here." The words struck the alien leader like a physical blow. The realization hit him hard. Humans were not just strong in battle, they were resilient beyond imagination. They did not know the meaning of defeat, and as the fleet continued its operations, the aliens understood that they were witnessing the true strength of the Deathworlders. The humans had made it clear this would not be an easy task. The mission would be brutal, and the galaxy would soon learn just how far the Deathworlders would go to ensure their success. As the days passed, the planet slowly but surely began to feel the effects of the human presence. The change was subtle at first, small victories in skirmishes, quick and efficient eradication of threats. But with every passing day it became clear, the Deathworlders weren't just helping, they were taking control. And the aliens? They could only watch, unable to comprehend the full scope of the power that humanity wielded. All they knew was that they had called for help, and they had gotten far more than they had ever imagined. The storm unleashed, Deathworlders in action. The arrival of the Deathworlder forces on the alien planet marked a turning point that no one could have predicted. The atmosphere, once filled with the uncertainty of a doomed species, shifted dramatically. The overwhelming presence of the Deathworlder fleet was like a sudden storm, powerful and unyielding. No one on the planet could ignore it. The alien leaders, who had once believed themselves to be at the pinnacle of military strength, were now realizing that they had been living in the shadow of something far greater, humanity's unrelenting will to survive. The human soldiers, well armed and dressed in their signature combat exoskeletons, moved like a single entity. Every movement was synchronized, every step deliberate. It was as if the entire fleet had rehearsed every action 1,000 times. It wasn't just battle tactics at play. It was the sheer force of human will. These soldiers were more than just warriors. They were the epitome of survival. The planet's alien forces, which had once been seen as a superior fighting force, quickly found themselves on the defensive. The humans didn't need to dominate with overwhelming firepower alone. It was their strategies, their unrelenting tenacity, and their unshakable resolve that turned the tide. The Deathworlders did not hesitate, and they did not retreat. For them, failure was not an option. As the human forces advanced, the alien leaders watched helplessly, their once proud military forces crumbling before the might of the humans. The battles that followed were brutal, efficient, and fast. Within days, human units had established strongholds across key points on the planet, while the alien forces were scattered, their lines broken. The humans didn't just overpower, they systematically dismantled their enemies, exploiting every weakness with terrifying precision. The alien leaders had underestimated their allies. They had assumed that the Deathworlders would simply provide backup, that they would come in with brute force and save the day. But this was not the case. The humans were not here to save anyone. They were here to win, to bring their unparalleled combat skills to bear and reshape the battle. Every time the aliens thought they had a plan, the humans found a way to counter it with unexpected force and tactical brilliance. The human commander, known for his ruthless yet strategic approach, was at the heart of this transformation. His mind worked like a machine, calculating each move with uncanny accuracy. His orders were clear and decisive. There was no room for error in his approach. No mercy, no hesitation. He had told his troops, "Every moment matters. If we fail, everything fails." Back on the front lines, the Deathworlders worked with relentless efficiency. Their advanced weaponry and armor, designed for extreme environments, allowed them to navigate the planet's harshest conditions without breaking a sweat. Even the most inhospitable zones, those areas that would have slowed down any other military force, were no match for the humans. They moved through the terrain with ease, clearing the battlefield and pushing forward with an unstoppable momentum. The alien resistance, though brave, was slowly being whittled down. Their weapons, while advanced in their own right, simply couldn't compare to the raw, brutal force of the Deathworlders. Alien troops were defeated not only in battle but psychologically as well. The Deathworlders' constant presence, their relentless push forward, wore down the morale of the alien forces. The once proud soldiers of the alien species were now retreating, scrambling to avoid complete destruction. On one of the key battlefields, a fierce fight raged on. The humans, equipped with high-powered energy rifles, fought tooth and nail against a strong alien resistance. But their tactics were flawless. Human squads worked as a unit, covering each other's backs, always staying a step ahead of the enemy. Meanwhile, the alien forces, though brave, seemed to move in disarray. The humans' efficiency in combat, their ability to make use of every advantage, quickly overwhelmed them. The human commander continued to coordinate the battle from a remote location, his eyes focused on the battlefield through a network of drones and satellites. His strategy was to keep the alien forces on the run, to never let them regroup. "We're not just here to fight," he said over the comms. "We're here to destroy their will to fight." The alien leaders began to understand the full scope of the Deathworlder forces. These humans didn't just fight for survival. They fought to annihilate their enemies, to remove any possibility of resistance. They didn't just want to win. They wanted to make a statement. This was not a battle for territory. This was a message, and it was one the alien leaders would never forget. The storm had been unleashed, and there was no turning back. The human forces had proven themselves to be far more than what the aliens had imagined. They were not just warriors. They were an unstoppable force, one that would not stop until the enemy was completely and utterly defeated. The alien leaders realized, with a sinking feeling, that their world had now entered a new era, an era where humans held the power. And the worst part, they didn't even know the true depth of humanity's strength. As the day turned to night, the battle continued, and the alien leaders knew, deep down, that the outcome was inevitable. The Deathworlders would win. The only question was how much destruction would come before the victory was complete. The turning point, the Deathworlders' unstoppable advance. The battle had raged for days, but the human forces showed no sign of slowing down. The alien resistance, which had once been formidable and proud, was crumbling under the weight of the Deathworlder assault. They had underestimated humanity's might, and now they were paying the price. The human fleet had not only arrived, they had brought an unstoppable force with them, and nothing seemed capable of stopping their advance. The alien commanders, now desperate, began to regroup, trying to organize a counterattack. But no matter how hard they tried, the humans were always one step ahead. Their strategies were a blend of military genius and ruthless practicality. Every move they made was calculated, and every decision was designed to create an unrelenting pressure on the alien forces. There was no room for error. Human squads, operating with surgical precision, struck at key alien installations, disrupting their command centers and communication lines. The aliens had no way to coordinate their resistance. Every attempt they made to form a united front was swiftly shattered by the relentless human onslaught. The aliens could not even retreat without facing another wave of Deathworlder forces closing in on them. Every escape route was blocked, every fallback point neutralized. It wasn't just the sheer force of the human soldiers that overwhelmed the aliens. It was their mindset. While the aliens had fought to survive, the humans fought to annihilate any threat. There was no mercy, no hesitation. Every battle, every skirmish, was an opportunity to stamp out the alien forces once and for all. The alien leaders watched as their forces were dismantled, one piece at a time. It was a relentless machine, a process that seemed to gain momentum with every passing hour. Back at the front lines, human soldiers fought with a calm determination that made them nearly impossible to predict. They moved through the alien cities, tearing through the defenses with ease. Where the alien forces fought with desperation, the humans fought with purpose. Each step they took was part of a larger plan. They didn't just rush in blindly. They methodically took control, bit by bit, ensuring that the alien forces had no place left to hide. Meanwhile, the alien civilians, who had initially watched from a distance with a sense of awe and fear, were now experiencing the full extent of humanity's power. Entire cities were being cleared out as human forces advanced without pause. The aliens, once the dominant species on their planet, now found themselves in the path of a force they could not understand. The Deathworlders did not simply fight. They erased the concept of resistance itself. The alien leaders, who had once hoped that a desperate last stand could turn the tide, began to realize the truth. They were fighting a battle they could not win. Even their most advanced weapons and tactics seemed powerless against the humans. The Deathworlders had proven that they were not just another force to be reckoned with. They were the ultimate weapon. The concept of victory had slipped from the aliens' grasp, and all that remained was the inevitability of defeat. As the days went on, the human forces began to make their final push. The alien leaders convened, knowing that there was no turning back. They had no more cards to play, no more strategies that could save them. The battle had been decided, and the humans had emerged as the undisputed victors. The Deathworlders, with their unstoppable will and unrelenting force, had proven that they were not just warriors. They were a force of nature, capable of reshaping entire galaxies in their wake. On the battlefield, the humans had gained a reputation that would echo throughout the stars for generations to come. Their reputation wasn't just based on their skill, it was based on their sheer refusal to lose. The human soldiers, having fought for survival in the harshest conditions of their own death worlds, carried that unyielding spirit into every battle they fought. There was no enemy too strong, no planet too hostile. They were the ultimate warriors, and they had proven it once again. As the battle reached its final stages, the alien forces were forced to surrender. The human fleet, having proven its overwhelming strength, had successfully neutralized all resistance. The planet, once on the brink of destruction, now found itself under the control of the Deathworlders. The alien species had no choice but to accept the human forces as their new masters. The human commander, who had led his forces through one of the most decisive victories in galactic history, stood tall on the command deck of his flagship. He gazed out at the planet below, knowing that this victory would be remembered for centuries to come. He had not just won a battle, he had secured humanity's place as the most feared warriors in the galaxy. For the aliens, the cost of their arrogance had been steep. Their once proud civilization had been shattered in the blink of an eye by a species they had underestimated. The Deathworlders had shown them no mercy. And now, as they looked at their defeated forces, they understood the true power of humanity. It was not just in their weapons or their technology, but in their unyielding spirit, their relentless drive to survive and to win. The message was clear. When the Deathworlders arrive, there is no escape. There is no turning back. There is only defeat, and humanity had just shown the galaxy what true power looked like. The aliens surrender. A new era begins. The dust had settled across the battlefield, but the aftermath was far from over. Alien cities, once bustling with life, now lay in ruins, their foundations shattered by the sheer force of humanity's might. The final stages of the battle had been swift and brutal, with no mercy shown. The aliens who had once prided themselves on their strength now found themselves kneeling before the Deathworlders, their forces broken beyond repair. It was a bitter reality for the alien leaders. They had watched their armies fall apart, their best defenses crumbling under the relentless human assault. The once proud species, who had dominated their corner of the galaxy, now had nothing left but surrender. No more soldiers, no more weapons, no more hope. As the final pockets of resistance faded away, the surviving alien commanders were forced to call for an emergency meeting. They knew what was coming. They had no other option. With the Deathworlder fleet looming overhead and their cities smoldering in the distance, they sent an official message to the human commander, their only chance for survival. The human commander, aboard his flagship, reviewed the message with cold, calculating eyes. It was a surrender. The aliens, once so sure of their own supremacy, now admitted that they could no longer fight. The terms were simple. Humans would take control of the planet, and the remaining alien forces would be allowed to live, but under strict human oversight. For the human commander, it wasn't just a victory. It was a message. It was a message to the galaxy that humanity could not be ignored. They were no longer just another species among many. They were the dominant force in the galaxy. And their reach, as the aliens had just learned, was vast and unstoppable. "Prepare for landing," the commander ordered, his voice firm, yet calm. "We're making history." The human fleet began its descent, the massive ships cutting through the atmosphere, each one carrying thousands of soldiers and technicians. The soldiers aboard were no ordinary troops. They were Deathworlders, hardened veterans of countless battles fought in the harshest environments known to any species. They were humanity's finest warriors, and now they were poised to take control of an entire alien world. As the first human soldiers stepped onto the alien soil, the survivors of the alien forces watched from a distance, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and disbelief. They had hoped for a victory, but now they were witnesses to their own defeat. The Deathworlders, with their imposing presence and unmatched military discipline, were everywhere. No corner of their world was untouched by the power of humanity. The aliens who had once controlled this world now found themselves powerless, their leaders no longer able to protect them. As the human forces advanced through the alien cities, the aliens were forced to accept their new reality. They were now subjects in a galaxy that had just been irrevocably altered by the Deathworlders' victory. The human soldiers didn't just secure the cities, they began the process of reorganization. Alien officials who had once been in charge now found themselves under human supervision. The old government structures were dismantled, replaced by human-led systems. The aliens had no choice but to comply, knowing full well that any act of defiance would be met with swift and decisive retaliation. In the coming days, the alien world would see a transformation. Where once there had been chaos and rebellion, now there would be order under human rule. The Deathworlders had proven that they were not just conquerors, they were builders. They would reshape the alien society from the ground up, implementing systems designed to ensure stability and compliance with humanity's demands. But it wasn't just the alien governments that had to adjust to their new reality. The alien civilians, who had once lived under their own rules, now had to contend with the harsh reality of life under the Deathworlders. Human soldiers patrolled the streets, ensuring that every citizen followed the new laws. The planet's economy, once thriving on alien trade and technology, was now integrated into the broader human system, ensuring that every aspect of life was controlled by the superior human forces. Throughout this process, there were whispers among the alien population. Some still clung to the belief that they could resist, that they could rise up and overthrow their new human overlords. But those whispers were quickly silenced by the ever-present reminder of the Deathworlders' power. Any alien who dared to speak out against the new order quickly found themselves dealt with by the military or government officials who had been carefully selected for their loyalty to humanity. For the human forces, this was not just a conquest, it was the beginning of something far larger. The galaxy had been forever changed, and humanity had set the stage for its own dominance. The message was clear. The Deathworlders would no longer be a mere footnote in the history of the universe. They would be the rulers, the force to be reckoned with. The aliens had learned the hard way that when humanity arrived, resistance was futile. As the human commander stood atop the balcony of his flagship, overlooking the transformed alien world, he knew that this was only the beginning. There were many more worlds to conquer, many more species to subdue. But humanity's place at the top of the galactic hierarchy was now secure. The Deathworlders had proven their might, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The once feared alien species now had to live with the reality of their defeat. Their civilizations, their cultures, their way of life. Everything they had once known was now under the control of the most terrifying warriors the galaxy had ever known. And humanity's reign was just beginning, a new era of human dominance. As the final remnants of the alien forces capitulated, a strange quiet fell over the once vibrant world. The stars above, now witnesses to humanity's unrelenting conquest, seemed to shine a little brighter. Humanity had proven, without a shadow of a doubt, that it was no longer just a participant in the galactic theater. It was the undisputed ruler of the stars. The Deathworlder fleet, after securing the planet, did not simply leave in the wake of their victory. They began the process of integration. Human fleets, renowned for their expertise in conquering and rebuilding, set up an intricate system that would dominate every facet of the alien world. Human engineers and scientists poured into the planet, establishing infrastructure, deploying technology, and preparing the planet for a new chapter under human rule. The alien governments, once in power, were swiftly dismantled. Alien leaders, many of whom had been placed in positions of power through years of military might and cunning, were now nothing more than subjects under the watchful eyes of their human captors. The human government, an efficient and brutal system, now imposed its law on the conquered race. The aliens who had once been their masters now answered to the Deathworlders, forced into submission. However, the change wasn't just political, it was cultural. The aliens, who had once seen themselves as superior, were now learning the true meaning of humanity's strength. It was a quiet, powerful lesson, one taught by the indomitable human spirit. The humans didn't just conquer the alien cities, they reshaped them, built them in their own image. From military outposts to scientific research facilities, the Deathworlders left their mark on every corner of the planet. Over the weeks that followed, the once proud alien species began to feel the full weight of their defeat. The alien civilians, who had once lived freely under their own laws, now found themselves living under a regime they had never before experienced. The streets, once filled with alien pride, now stood silent as human soldiers patrolled the cities, ensuring complete control. Any hint of rebellion was swiftly crushed by the ruthless human military. Deathworlder commanders, known for their strategic brilliance and unmatched ferocity in battle, maintained an iron grip on the planet. These commanders didn't just enforce the law. They created a state of fear. It was a fear that kept the aliens compliant, a fear that reminded them of the power humanity now wielded. But not all aliens were content to live under human rule. In the dark corners of the world, in the shadows of the conquered cities, there were whispers of resistance. A few courageous souls began to organize, planning to defy their new human overlords. They sought to overthrow the Deathworlders and reclaim their planet. But this time, resistance was futile. Humanity had crushed entire fleets before. Entire worlds had fallen beneath their feet. A ragtag group of alien insurgents didn't stand a chance against the might of the Deathworlders. The aliens who dared to fight back quickly found their rebellion crushed with brutal efficiency. In the capital, the last remnants of the alien leadership convened in a secretive, desperate meeting. Their world was in ruins, their people defeated, and the Deathworlders now held them by the throat. Yet, a faint flicker of defiance still burned in their hearts. "We cannot allow ourselves to be subjugated forever," one alien leader said, voice trembling with both fear and anger. "We must find a way to push them back, to reclaim our freedom." But those who listened knew the truth. Humanity's reach was too vast, its strength too overwhelming. The Deathworlders had made it clear that resistance would be met with death, that rebellion would lead only to more destruction. The alien leaders, broken and defeated, knew that any further efforts would be in vain. As the days passed, the human forces tightened their control. The alien race, once so proud, now had no choice but to bow to their new masters. The humans, it seemed, were everywhere, enforcing laws, distributing resources, and building infrastructure to further solidify their power. There was no corner of the world left untouched by humanity's influence. The Deathworlders' dominance was complete. The human fleet, their mission accomplished, began to set their sights on the next frontier. But before they left, the human commander stood at the center of the alien city, gazing out at the skyline that now belonged to humanity. His thoughts were heavy, but resolute. "We will not be forgotten," he said, his voice carrying through the comms, his words echoing in the hearts of every soldier. "Humanity will leave its mark on the galaxy, and no one will dare challenge us again." With those final words, the human forces began to prepare for their next conquest. The Deathworlders were unstoppable, and the galaxy had been put on notice. No longer would they be underestimated. No longer would anyone dare to challenge humanity's might. The once powerful alien race had been brought to its knees, and their world, their very identity, had been erased by the indomitable will of humanity's warriors. The galaxy was now a different place, a place where humanity's power stood unrivaled, and every species, whether ally or foe, knew the cost of crossing the Deathworlders. And as the human fleets sailed off to the next conquest, a quiet truth settled over the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and they had no intention of leaving.